Hello, my name is Ronnie Vanderlinden, and this is my final project for my business communication class. I did my project on Volkswagen's accountability, um, pretty much based on the Dieselgate scandal, which has been in the news not so much in the most recent times, but in the past few years. It's became quite a big issue. I personally don't think so many people have realized how big of an issue it actually is and like just how far widespread it is or has became and how many people it actually affects. But I thought it would be a good idea to do my project on this because I like Volkswagens, I like cars, and it was just something that interests me, and why not? So, the intro about the scandal. Well, the whole scandal was based on the fact that Volkswagen cheated out the federal emissions. The federal emissions are pretty much standards set by our federal government here, the EPA, the CARB, which is the California Air and Resources Board, which is a really strict pretty much regulating body for pollution and air quality control and all that for California. But bottom line is the government sets the standards which all these new vehicles have to pass. So that way we have clean air time and time again, and that way they can say it's less of a blame for global warming or air pollution and so forth. But what happened is Volkswagen got caught cheating with these federal, pretty much standardized across the auto industry, emission standards. They got away for it, or got away with it for 6 years, which is actually quite remarkable, thinking that you can play a trick on the government for that long. But they got away from it from 2009 to 2015 before they were caught. And the funny part is how they were actually caught was not by the government, but it was by a couple of researchers at West Virginia University. They actually received a grant from the government to run emissions testing on new diesel vehicles. And they ran a few tests over and over on 3 different kinds. They didn't specify what one kind was, but they kept getting odd results and from the Volkswagen, so they in turn kept redoing it and redoing it. And they kept getting the same odd results. So they had a feeling that there was a problem, but everybody was scared to say what it was, being how big of a company Volkswagen was and how big of a mess this could make if they got caught cheating or all this information came out and accusing big companies. There's a lot of reasons why it would end really bad, but yeah, it was actually a couple small researchers in a really small little shop at West Virginia who uncovered this whole multi-billion-dollar scheme. But that's about all for the intro. But emissions, for those of you who don't know, emissions are pretty much toxic gases that they're bad for humans, animals, plants, the environment, you name it. They're toxic for it pretty much. They hurt the ozone, our environment. They're what a lot of people refer to as one of the biggest causes of global warming. They're also responsible for a lot of times people will blame health conditions on them, because you got to have clean air to breathe, and emissions from exhaust in this case don't help. So how Volkswagen cheated? What they did was they figured out a way to put what they call a defeat device on cars. In this, what this defeat device would do was that it would pretty much play tricks with the car's main engine computer and tell it what to do and what not to do. And what happened was that this defeat device would pretty much register when the car was being tested on some certain and special kind of equipment the government uses. It could be the car could pick that up because it's a standardized test they do on all these cars. The car's defeat device would pick it up and realize that, oh, okay, I'm being tested on a computer. or on for emission levels. So I'm going to turn on all my emissions equipment, so then the car would pass with flying colors. But how they got away with it was then once you start driving like a regular person up and down city streets, down the highway, come to stop signs or red lights, and so on and so forth, the cars would pretty much bypass all their emissions equipment and they would get better fuel economy, which that was one of the main reasons why you would buy a small diesel car, is for fuel economy. But what what is really unfortunate is, yes, they did get good fuel economy, but they produced more than 40 times the legal pollution limit that the U.S. emission standards allow. In this case, they didn't produce more than 40 times every single kind of pollution that a car makes, but in this exact Volkswagen case, I guess you could call it, they produce nitrous oxide, or a variant of it, which is very deadly and 40 times more than what is legal. And they got caught. So what the government did after they got caught was they fined Volkswagen $2.8 billion, which was the biggest fine that ever took place in the automotive industry. It may not sound like a lot of money for one of the biggest auto manufacturers in the world, but it adds up quite quick. There was actually 11 million vehicles affected worldwide, which sounds like a lot, but when you take into consideration how big the US is, we were actually only personally affected with right around 500,000 to 600,000 vehicles. The exact number is different from site to site depending on where I've seen it. But what costs Volkswagen the most money is the car buybacks that the government, or that our specific government, made them do. So in the case of the United States, Volkswagen had to buy back all these cars that they sold. So they bought all these cars back, all 500,000 of them, and now they're just sitting in vacant lots all around the country. But that's where all their money went, and that was expected to cost over $20 billion alone, just the buybacks, plus your regular government fees and fines and all the other trouble that they've been getting into. A lot of people wonder, why'd they cheat? Why didn't they just go and pass the emissions like every other small diesel car manufacturer? A lot of people say it was for money concerns. The car was getting old and they didn't see a reason in doing a whole facelift and updating the whole platform so that way it could pass emissions. They figured they would just let it run its course. Some people say it's a small market. Some of the research I found said that small diesel passenger cars account for 0.9% of the U.S.'s total car sales. That's not even 1%. The amount of millions and millions of dollars it would cost for Volkswagen to come up with a new platform to sell in the U.S., just the U.S., with their emission standards, it really wouldn't make that much of a business sense because they're pumping so much money into a car that they probably will not really break even on, because it's such a small market and it's decreasing all the time because more people are going towards hybrid vehicles than diesel vehicles. A lot of people blame the engineers who are behind all the coding and technological sides of it for, they say it was their fault, or they chose to do it because they were under so much pressure. They had so much engineering to do in so little time and such a small budget. This was the quickest and most affordable and reasonable solution they found. And of course, better mileage and power. You don't have any restrictions on your motor, it's going to run better. And that's half the reason why a lot of people buy diesel motors, is so that way you get good mileage and power. Yeah, I tossed this in there. Better mileage. This is actually kind of a funny ad. This was made by Audi, which is a subsidiary of Volkswagen. But it says if you drive a clean diesel, then you could be saving up to $600 a year on fuel. diesel. It's no longer a dirty word. I find this to be a very funny ad because they released this around 2011, which was, of course, one of the years where they were running these dirty diesels. So, yeah, I guess based on what they're advertising, maybe one of the reasons to make them dirty was to save on fuel. Punishment. The government actually, in a court based out of Detroit, that's where one of the main hearings was at, fined them $2.8 billion. Of course, they have the regular $30 billion in buyback fees. And the government has placed a, I would almost call it a supervisor over them to go oversee the factory, or a liaison would be a better term, to watch them and oversee them and make sure that they aren't trying to pull any strings or trick any other governments. So they kind of have a big brother watching them right now, at least for a U.S. consumer standpoint. How did it affect our economy? Well, Volkswagen stock, VWAGY, as you can find on the New York Stock Exchange, it crashed a lot and very quick. Also had a loss of a lot of jobs. This may sound kind of weird, being their foreign overseas company, but dealerships were going under. All of a sudden, there's no cars for salespeople to sell. There's no cars for mechanics to work on. Just didn't work out. And one less company stimulate the economy. They're not making money. They're not spending money. It's not doing any of us any good. So repair and rebuild. That's how they're starting to slowly build their model up. They're fixing the affected models and slowly reselling them. What they're doing is taking all the cars that have been sitting, retrofitting the emission systems, and reselling them. That is, along with their promises to be more green. I guess you could say they almost go hand in hand, because they're taking these dirty vehicles, making them more green, kind of like recycling them, and at the same time they're building back trust, letting them know that, hey, this might have just been a technical error that we didn't catch, or a technicality. We're sorry, we're trying to do our best to get back on track. They also say they're in the process of developing electric vehicles, which Volkswagen currently does not have any on the market. Again, I love these ads because it's so hysterical looking back at it, how they say diesel's no longer a dirty word, but they were pretty much the culprits of the biggest diesel scam of, well, all time. The summary: they cheated on emissions. They got caught by a couple scientists working at a college who never would have thought in their wildest dreams that it would have exploded into what we know now. Financial ruin. Volkswagen paid out billions upon billions. They're still getting sued by lots of private parties who are accusing them of negligence in making such a software program that costs their investors on the stock exchange millions and millions, possibly even billions of dollars. So they're also facing with that, as far as paying with their buybacks and government fines and new rules and regulations and having a big brother watching over back. But their biggest thing right now is most likely trying to salvage their company and reputation, which is why Volkswagen has, of course, been fixing these cars that were all, I wouldn't say repossessed, but bought back, or buybacks as they like to call them, from regular people. They're trying their best so that way they can fix these, try to make peace with people and the environment, the economy, all the tree huggers, or I guess that might not have been the best way to put it, but all the people who may have been very upset and are upset. And they realize that this isn't a night and day shift, how they are going to go from being very loyal to the company to hating them, and then just being very loyal again. Volkswagen needs to realize it's going to take a long time and a lot of good acts to kind of slowly try to walk past the bad acts. But they are doing good. Their stocks are slowly coming on an increase. I believe last year it was a 12% increase in their stock. But slowly they're making their way back, and that's good for a company that large. And that is all. Thank you.